Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss reported common ground over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is giving rise to hopes for a long-awaited settlement. Is it credible this time? Maybe. What makes me think so? Well, because the media are lying about it. That's always a good sign. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the news today is that the EU and the UK may be agreeing to a system whereby goods passing from Britain to Northern Ireland are treated differently for the purpose of protocol checks, depending on whether they are intended to remain in Northern Ireland or passing into the EU single market. Now, this has been something that both sides have agreed would be an ideal outcome from the start. The problem has been as follows. So the Tory Brexiteers argue that goods exported for sale in Northern Ireland do not risk the integrity of the single market because they never go into the single market. I mean, why do we need to check those? That's up to the UK, isn't it? So it shouldn't be subject to these checks. Fair enough, said the EU. So tell you what, you set up systems so that we can tell the difference between them, and we think we're onto a winner here. So, maybe you've got labels on them for sale only in Northern Ireland, or, maybe you've got, we'll have tracking of the goods so we can see that they're staying in Northern Ireland. Oh, no, said the Tories. Well, we don't want to try to implement any systems for telling them apart. Well, the labelling, just a little label on them. Well, that'll cost businesses more money. We don't want to do that, right? Well, we need to track them then. So, well, no, we don't. We're not going to help. We're not going to show you the tracking data. We just want you to not require checks on the goods which will remain in Northern Ireland. But how will we know How will we know which are the ones that are going to stay in Northern Ireland and which are the ones that are not? Well, the exporters will put it in the paperwork. There'll be a form that says it's just going to Northern Ireland, right? I mean, what if smugglers take advantage and tell a few little fibs on their paperwork? Well, we'd only do this for trusted traders, you see. It's not just any Tom, Dick or Harry. No, trusted traders. Right. So without the live tracking data, how do we know that a particular consignment is coming from or going to this trusted trader? Well, the paperwork will say so. What if someone falsifies the paperwork? This has been the situation. The EU said, look, we need a bit of reassurance here. And so it's continued for some time now, where I just really thought, and still this may be what happens, that both sides are just going through the motions of negotiating this final settlement until the government changes and we actually just get on with it. But now we're being told that the EU have agreed to this UK proposal about red and green lanes to require certain goods to be able to pass through with no checks, less paperwork. So why do I think that this time? Well, maybe there's an actual agreement in the offing. The way that particularly two national broadcasters are presenting the news, or media outlets, misleading at best, potential lies at worst. So you take the BBC News first of all. The opening byline to today's article: the UK government's plan to replace the Northern Ireland Protocol, blah, 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 blah. There is no UK government plan to replace the Northern Ireland Protocol. There was a period of time under Boris Johnson where they kept saying we should change the Northern Ireland Protocol, chuck it in the bin, start again. It obviously went badly wrong. But the EU are having none of it. No, you agreed this. You signed it into law. This is what we're going to do now. All of the discussions have been about really how you implement the protocol at a practical level, not replacing it. How do you implement it without causing unintended problems? Really, that's what it's been about. Because there are going to be problems that neither side wants. The protocol itself is an international treaty. Not one word of it is being changed. But how do you implement various aspects of it? That is up for discussion. This is what the wrangling has been about for several years now. So why are the BBC, not for the first time either, reporting updates as attempts to change the protocol? Because that would give the government a perceived win. I mean, negotiations are always, at any level, ultimately about finding an acceptable common ground between two sides and then allowing both of those sides to claim victory to their own stakeholders. For years, the Tories have said the protocol doesn't work, or that at least the EU have been too anal about applying it. So simply coming to some agreement about how it can be implemented after years of faff isn't really going to justify all the time and resources spent on something that people will go, well, why didn't you just do that from the start? So the media helpfully tell the public that the government have succeeded in changing the protocol, or in some way getting the EU to agree something that it wouldn't hitherto agree to. Most people aren't actually going to take the time to read and understand the protocol. They're certainly not going to check afterwards, when they're told, oh, it's now been changed. Are they going to go to the government website and say, oh, yeah, it's been updated? Because otherwise, what they'll actually find is, no, the Northern Ireland Protocol, even when this is all done and dusted, will be the same Northern Ireland Protocol as was last uploaded on January 2021 when we left the single market. Then there's another report, RTE this time. Now, that's an Irish media outlet. So it's certainly not particularly interested in going out of its way to help the UK government sell its snake oil. Tony Connolly, their main Brexit writer, said that the EU will accept that GB goods shipped to Northern Ireland and remaining there can be treated differently to those moving into the Republic of Ireland and therefore the single market. It said the EU will agree to the red and green lanes at ports as proposed by the UK. So all sounding like the UK are winning a major concession that could unlock an agreement in both the British and Irish media. But for those of us who've been following protocol news for years, and I know I'm not the only one, this presentation of what is happening in the media was more than a little confusing. Now, I do think that the UK government did come up with the idea of the red and green lanes, as in the terms. I think they introduced those terms. I don't think that was the EU. But the nuts and bolts of how it works was actually an EU proposal. There was an article in 2021, for example, EU proposes express lane for goods going between GB and NI. It was all about the EU Commission's suggestion that we set up safeguards to allow what they called an express lane, the UK government are calling a green lane, in order to accept certain goods as being intended only for the Northern Ireland market, and therefore not need checks. All the EU have essentially asked for is guarantees that goods do not pass from Britain to the single market via Northern Ireland without full export documentation and as necessary checks. If there is to be a practical agreement on this now, it will be because the UK government have accepted the need to put in those safeguards which allow you to tell the difference between goods remaining in Northern Ireland and those which are not. Of course, even if this is all agreed, there still remains the issue of the European Court of Justice. The ECJ obviously is the final arbiter on matters of EU law. All laws everywhere in the world, whether international or national, there is a court which is considered the final say on the matter. We have the Supreme Court in the UK to decide on matters of UK law. There's the Court of Session for Scottish law, for example. And of course, you have the ECJ for EU law. And because some EU law is in place in Northern Ireland, if you have a dispute on that law, of course it has to be the ECJ that has a role in resolving that dispute. Now, I don't know if there's any real fudge here. If there's a fudge to be had, maybe Sunak will just quietly drop the issue. I mean, imagine a foreign business. So a foreign business comes to the UK, we'll invest in the UK, but they don't like the Supreme Court. No, we don't trust the Supreme Court, you see. So if there's going to be any disputes on matters of UK law while we're operating in your country, you should set up a foreign arbitration panel with the Supreme Court cut out completely because we don't trust them, Brexiteers would go nuts at that prospect. Yet they see no problem with the ECJ not being able to decide matters of EU law. But maybe Sunak will persuade them to drop their objections. Well, the Tory MPs, he doesn't have to worry about Brexiteers outside of his own parliamentary party. They've got no say. But at least, the ERG is what I'm really talking about. Maybe he can persuade them to drop their objections in return for his support for something equally insane, but at least achievable, like removing even more of our rights and freedoms as his party have been doing for the past couple of years anyway. It's hard to see how he does that in time for the Silver Jubilee of the Good Friday Agreement, though, because it's really just weeks away. But anyway, there we are. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.